Princeton University was buzzing with excitement. The annual Defining Success lecture series had always attracted some of the biggest names in business, technology, and academia. But this year, the guest speaker was an unexpected choice, Keanu Reeves. Most people knew him as the legendary Neo from The Matrix or the unstoppable John Wick. But what did Keanu Reeves have to say about success? Could a Hollywood action star offer wisdom to some of the brightest young minds in America? The skepticism was evident. As students, professors, and invited guests filled the historic Alexander Hall, some whispered their doubts. What does Keanu Reeves know about real success? He's an actor, not an entrepreneur or scientist. Maybe this is just a publicity stunt? But those who truly followed Keanu's life knew better. This was a man who had faced unimaginable hardships, losing his best friend, his unborn child, and his partner, all while navigating the brutal world of Hollywood. Yet, through it all, he remained humble, kind, and grounded. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the audience as the Dean of Princeton stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, today, we welcome a man whose journey to success is unlike any other. His wisdom goes beyond the silver screen. Please give a warm welcome to Keanu Reeves. The audience clapped politely, but there was no roaring applause. Yet, then, Keanu walked onto the stage, dressed simply in a black blazer, faded jeans, and his signature long hair tucked behind his ears. He carried no notes, no slides, no prepared speech, just himself. He stepped to the podium, looked at the audience with a gentle smile, and began speaking in his calm, soulful voice. I have to be honest with you, I don't know what success really means. The audience shifted in their seats. What kind of opening was this? Keanu continued, his deep voice filling the hall. For years, I chased success the way the world defines it. Fame, money, admiration. And I got those things. But let me tell you something. None of that ever made me feel truly successful. He paused, letting his words settle. So today, I'm not here to give you a formula for success. I won't tell you to work hard, hustle, or dream big. You already know that. Instead, I want to share with you 3 stories from my life that changed the way I see success forever. The room fell completely silent. Even the most skeptical students leaned in. These stories are about failure, loss, and something I never expected, freedom. With that, Keanu Reeves launched into the first story that would leave the entire audience speechless. Keanu took a deep breath and looked around the audience. His eyes were calm, thoughtful. He wasn't in a hurry. The first story I want to share is about failure. Not the kind of failure that's cute and inspiring. The kind of failure that makes you question everything about yourself. The room was silent. When I was in my early 20s, I wanted to be a professional hockey player. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Most people had no idea. I grew up in Canada, and hockey was my first love. I played as a goalie and I was pretty good. I dreamed of making it to the NHL. I worked hard. I trained every day. I thought my path was set. He sighed, shaking his head. And then one day I got injured. A serious knee injury. Doctors told me I wouldn't be able to play professionally. My dream was over before it even began. Keanu paused, his voice steady. I was devastated. I had no backup plan. I wasn't a great student. I wasn't rich. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. It felt like the universe had slammed a door in my face. Many students in the audience shifted uncomfortably. They had all experienced failure in some way, but nothing that crushing. For a while, I was lost. I worked odd jobs. I felt like a disappointment. But then I stumbled into acting. Not because I had some grand vision, but because a friend convinced me to audition for a small play. I had nothing to lose, so I said, why not? Keanu smiled slightly, as if he could still see his younger self in that moment. And something strange happened. When I stepped onto that stage for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. Not success. Not money. Just freedom. The freedom to express myself. To create. To be someone else for a while. He leaned forward. And that's when I learned my first big lesson about success. Sometimes, failure isn't the end. It's a push in a different direction. The room was still. We spend so much time being afraid of failure. We think if we fail, it means we're not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy. But what if failure is actually a gift? What if failure is trying to show us a path we never even considered? He let the question linger. If I had never gotten injured, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't have acted in The Matrix or John Wick. I wouldn't have had the privilege of telling stories that touched millions of lives. A few heads in the audience nodded. The skepticism was fading. People were starting to listen, not just with their ears, but with their hearts. So, if you ever find yourself failing, if your dream collapses, if you feel lost, just remember, it might not be the end of your story. It might be the beginning of a different one. Keanu stepped back for a moment, letting the message sink in. Then he smiled slightly. And now, let me tell you the second story. The story about loss. The audience leaned in again, fully hooked. Keanu took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room. His voice grew softer, more introspective. The second story I want to share is about loss. And this one is hard. The audience grew even quieter. By the time I was in my early 30s, I had everything I thought I wanted. My career was thriving. The Matrix had changed my life. I was famous. I was rich. But none of that mattered when I lost the person I loved most. He paused. Even those who had heard bits and pieces of his story before felt the weight of his words. Her name was Jennifer Syme. She was my partner, my best friend. And we were expecting a child together. A baby girl. A few gasps echoed through the hall. But 8 months into the pregnancy, our daughter was stillborn. Keanu swallowed hard. The pain in his voice was raw, real. It broke us. We tried to stay strong. But grief changes you. A year later, Jennifer was in a car accident. And just like that, she was gone too. A deep, heavy silence filled the room. Some students lowered their heads. Others wiped their eyes. Even those who had never known true loss felt the depth of his words. I was numb. I went to work. I smiled in interviews. But inside, I was empty. Success, money, fame. None of it meant anything. I had everything the world said would make me happy. But I had lost the only things that truly did. He let those words settle. And that's when I learned my second lesson about success. Success is meaningless if you have no one to share it with. A few people in the audience let out small breaths. Ones they didn't even realize they were holding. We chase success like it's the most important thing in the world. But tell me this. What's the point of reaching the top if you have no one waiting for you when you get there? Keanu stepped away from the podium for a moment, letting his words breathe. I know many of you are here at Princeton because you want to succeed. You want to build careers, make money, change the world. And that's good. But don't forget the people around you. The people who love you. The people who make life worth living. He looked around the hall, his eyes locking with different students. Call your parents. Hug your friends. Make time for the people who matter. Because no amount of success will ever replace the love of those you lose. There was a sniffle somewhere in the crowd. A professor wiped his glasses. A student in the front row blinked rapidly, as if fighting back tears. Keanu exhaled, a small, bittersweet smile forming on his face. Now, let me tell you the third and final story. The story about freedom. The audience wasn't just listening anymore. They were feeling every word. Keanu let his last words settle before he spoke again. His voice was steady, but there was a new energy in it. The third story I want to share is about something I never expected, freedom. The audience leaned in. They had heard about failure. They had felt the weight of loss. But freedom? What did Keanu Reeves mean by that? For a long time, I thought success meant proving something. To my parents, to my critics, to the world. I thought if I worked hard enough, achieved enough, people would finally see me as enough. He let out a small laugh, shaking his head. But no matter how many movies I made, no matter how much money I earned, I always felt like I had to do more. Be more. It was exhausting. And then, something changed. Keanu paused for a moment. I was in Paris filming John Wick. One night, after a long day on set, I decided to take a walk alone. No bodyguards, no assistants. Just me. I walked the streets, listening to the sounds of the city. I watched strangers laugh, lovers hold hands, children chasing pigeons. A faint smile crossed his lips. And suddenly, it hit me. This is what freedom feels like. Just being alive. Just existing. Not worrying about what comes next. Not thinking about success or failure. Just being. The audience was silent. And that's when I learned my third lesson. Success isn't about what you achieve. It's about how free you feel. A few students nodded, their expressions thoughtful. We spend our lives chasing something we think will make us happy. A job, a title, a number in a bank account. But what if real success isn't about any of that? What if success is waking up in the morning and feeling at peace with yourself? What if success is having the freedom to enjoy your life, instead of constantly proving your worth? He let that question hang in the air. Some of the happiest people I know aren't the richest. They aren't the most famous. They aren't the most powerful. They're the ones who found freedom. Freedom to love, freedom to laugh, freedom to live without fear of what others think. Keanu stepped back from the podium, his eyes scanning the audience one last time. So, my friends, I'll leave you with this. Don't chase success. Chase freedom. Because when you are truly free, success will find you. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence. And then thunderous applause. Students, professors, and guests rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, some even wiping their eyes. The skepticism that had filled the room at the start was completely gone. Keanu Reeves had not only spoken about success, he had redefined it. He smiled humbly, gave a small bow, and walked off the stage. But the impact of his words would stay with them forever. As Keanu Reeves walked off the stage, the applause continued to thunder through Alexander Hall. Some students whistled, others clapped until their hands turned red. Professors, deans, and guests, many of whom had heard countless speeches on success, stood in awe. But what was most remarkable wasn't just the standing ovation. It was the silence that followed. Long after Keanu had left the stage, long after the applause had died down, people just sat there, lost in thought. His words had shifted something in them. For Ryan Carter, a senior majoring in finance, it was a wake-up call. He had spent his entire college life chasing a Wall Street job, sacrificing friendships, sleep, and even his own happiness. But now, for the first time, he wondered, am I actually happy? For Professor Linda Monroe, who had spent decades teaching at Princeton, it was a moment of reflection. She had spent years publishing research papers, seeking awards, and proving herself in academia. But had she really lived freely? For Emily Sinclair, a freshman struggling with self-doubt, it was a lifeline. She had feared failure so much that she never even tried. But Keanu's story made her realize, what if failure is just a new beginning? As people left the hall, they weren't just inspired, they were transformed. By the next morning, clips from Keanu's speech had flooded social media. Hashtag Keanu Reeves Princeton started trending on X, formerly Twitter. The speech was shared millions of times on Instagram and YouTube. Even news outlets like CNN and the New York Times ran headlines. Loudspeaker, Keanu Reeves redefines success at Princeton. And the internet can't stop talking about it. One post in particular went viral. Keanu Reeves just gave the most powerful speech on success I've ever heard. No fancy words. No complicated theories. Just raw truth. I'm rethinking my entire life. Within 24 hours, the full video of his speech hit 50 million views on YouTube. People around the world, entrepreneurs, artists, students, even CEOs, began questioning their definition of success. Elon Musk tweeted, "Keanu's right. Success without freedom is just another kind of prison." Oprah posted on Instagram, "A must-watch. This isn't just about success. It's about life." Even Harvard Business Review wrote an article titled, "Keanu Reeves just gave the most important speech on success since Steve Jobs' 2005 Stanford address." Days later, A journalist caught up with Keanu in New York. Your speech at Princeton has gone viral. Millions are calling it life-changing. How do you feel about it? Keanu chuckled softly. I didn't expect that. I just spoke from the heart. If it helped someone, that's all that matters. People are saying it's one of the greatest speeches on success ever given. Do you think you've finally figured out the secret to success? Keanu paused, then smiled. I don't think there's a secret. But if there was, it wouldn't be about money, fame, or status. It would be about something simple, living a life you don't need to escape from. The interviewer nodded, taking in the words. And what's next for you? Keanu grinned. I don't know. And you know what? That's the best part.